This is a very lengthy and interesting article on the Sky Sports website where they've got a tiny short little clip of Dillian Whyte and Tyson Fury in the ring together for one of their sparring sessions. They don't actually show any of the sparring, disappointingly. I have to assume that they've got the rest of this video, or whoever gave them this footage has got the rest of this video where you do actually see the sparring session. Unfortunate that we don't get to see that, right? But they talk to a couple of Tyson Fury's former sparring partners in Eddie Chambers and Steve Cunningham, and they also talk to Tyson Fury's uncle and former trainer Peter Fury and ask them all whether the rumors of Dillian Whyte dropping Tyson Fury and sparring were true or not. And interestingly, again, it's a very long article, and they interview all three of those guys, as well as Dillian Whyte. None of them confirm or deny it. So, very diplomatic from the lot of them. Eddie Chambers and Steve Cunningham said they never saw Dillian Whyte drop Tyson Fury in sparring, but they both concede that neither one of them was there for all of the sparring sessions between the two. So, again, they're kind of staying on the fence and saying, well, we didn't see it, but we weren't there for all the sessions. And as far as Peter Fury, the stuff he says is very cryptic. He doesn't come out and flat deny that Tyson was dropped by Dillian Whyte. He just keeps saying that I don't care about sparring, I don't care about the gossip, I don't really take anything from things that happen in sparring, it's just sparring, etc., etc. So have a read of it for yourselves, but that's pretty much what Peter Fury says. I mean, there's just a little bit here where he says, Peter concluded, they are only spars to me, I don't take anything from them, I'm not interested in all the gossip, etc., etc. So, look, my take on it is that Dillian Whyte did drop Tyson Fury in sparring. I am 99.999% sure that he did, because, again, Tyson Fury has never categorically denied it. He's tried to make it look like he's denying it, but he's never categorically denying it. And the fact that he hasn't categorically denied it and tried to actually, try and insinuate that it didn't happen rather than flat out say it, that just makes me more confident that it did happen. Now, as far as what does it mean, it doesn't really mean anything. We know that Tyson Fury has been down in fights. He was down against Nevin Pikage. He was down against Steve Cunningham. He was down against Deontay Wilder. I've got no doubt in my mind that with little 10-ounce gloves on, if Dillian Whyte catches him right with that left hook, he can put Tyson Fury down. Okay? And that is irrespective of whether he dropped him in sparring. But at the same time, Tyson Fury is a tremendous boxer, and he has come on leaps and bounds since they sparred. Yeah, they sparred a very, very long time ago, and the footage, the tiny little clip of footage that they show on Sky Sports, I believe this looks like it was from the David Haye camp. Yeah, because you can see the setup there is quite an advanced setup, whereas the previous time they sparred, to my knowledge, was not long after Tyson Fury had fought Nevin Pikage. And I believe they sparred in wherever it was, in Manchester or Lancashire somewhere. Whereas this sparring, I believe, was out in Belgium, I think it was, where Tyson Fury's camp was for the David Haye fight. So, yeah, I think Dillian Whyte says this is the camp where he dropped Fury. Now, if that's the case, as you can see here, Fury is not wearing headgear. Now, Dillian Whyte looks to have at least 16 or 18-ounce gloves on. Fury has no headgear. And the sparring sessions were varied, according to Steve Cunningham and Eddie Chambers. In some of the sparring sessions, it was just a technical spar. They weren't really going hammer and tong. But in other sparring sessions, it could get quite heated between the pair. Yeah, and that's normal in sparring. You're not always going to go in there and look to have the thrill and manila in the gym. Sometimes you're going to have lighter sessions where you're working on technical things. And other times you're going to get stuck in and it's going to be almost like a real fight. So they were mixing it up. But as I say, somebody like me who wasn't there, and I don't know for absolute certain, but I'm extremely confident that Dillian Whyte did drop Tyson Fury. As confident as you could possibly be without actually having been there. Now again, doesn't really mean anything. Long time ago. And if Tyson Fury was to fight Dillian Whyte now, would I be picking Dillian Whyte to win? No. I'd be picking Tyson Fury. would I even be picking Dillian Whyte to drop Tyson Fury in the fight? I would say that's more likely than Dillian Whyte outright winning. But I would give Dillian Whyte maybe a 30% chance of dropping Tyson Fury if they fought. Maybe 35% chance. 65% of me thinks that Tyson Fury would just outbox Dillian Whyte and win a comfortable decision. I wouldn't put it past Tyson Fury actually stopping Dillian Whyte in the second half of the fight. But bear in mind, if you press Dillian Whyte the way that he pressed Deontay Wilder, Whyte has got a much better counter-punching game, particularly with that left hook. So you got to be careful if you're going to try and put it on Dillian Whyte. Ask Anthony Joshua, right? He tried to put it on Dillian Whyte in that second round, and he nearly came a cropper. And many fighters have come a cropper when they've tried to put it on Dillian Whyte. Ask Derek Chisora when he was trying to put it on Dillian Whyte in the 11th round of their rematch. Got caught with a hellacious left hook, and down Derek Chisora went. He was out cold. So you got to be careful if you're going to put it on Dillian Whyte, because very, very hard, fast counters can come back at you. But with that being said, I wouldn't put it past Tyson Fury stopping Dillian Whyte late in the fight, because Dillian Whyte doesn't have the quickest feet. Tyson Fury got good stamina. I think, to be honest with you, even though Tyson Fury looked really good against Deontay Wilder and his work for the most part was really clean, I think if the fight against Dillian Whyte went into the second half, it might turn into a bit of a sloppy fight with a lot of leaning on and, Tyson Fury doing boxing when he can. But I get the feeling it might be a more of a physical fight, depending on how Tyson Fury decides to box. If Tyson Fury wants to be aggressive and he wants to try and push for the knockout against Dillian Whyte, I think it could be quite a physical affair in the second half. But if he just wants to get on his toes and do to Dillian what he did, let's say, to Wilder in the first fight, then he should be able to take a victory without really getting wet and keeping it fairly clean. So it all depends on the approach of the Gypsy King. But I just feel like the height, reach, and movement of Tyson Fury, he has the versatility to fight Dillian Whyte a number of different ways. And that, to me, will be the deciding factor if they face each other in the professional ring. But in sparring, Dillian Whyte and Tyson Fury sparred many, many rounds together. And in a situation like that, where some are technical spars, some you're going hell for leather, some days you're going to be more tired than others. Sometimes, you got several different sparring partners jumping in with you over the course of you doing 12 rounds. They're doing 4 rounds. You might have like one guy do 4 rounds, another guy do 4 rounds, another guy do 4 rounds, or maybe 4 guys do 3 rounds each. They're coming in fresh for 3 rounds. And by the 8th, 9th, you're knackered and a fresh guy's jumping in. In a situation like that, you could get dropped by a fighter who's not as good as you because he's coming in fresh and you're knackered. Do you understand? At the end of the day, this was a Tyson Fury training camp. It's not a Dillian Whyte training camp. Tyson Fury was the one being pushed beyond his limits more so than his sparring partners were. I have to imagine, at least. Okay? So in a situation like that, where you're sparring a guy multiple times and it's very, very tough in the middle of camp, you can get dropped. You can get dropped by a guy who might not be able to land a glove on you if you're both fresh and you're both on it, especially if it's in a proper professional fight. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that's the case with Dillian Whyte, but I'm just putting sparring into perspective. Yeah? There are lots of circumstances surrounding sparring sessions which people need to take into account. Yeah. So, yeah, that's my take on it. I personally think Dillian Whyte did drop Tyson Fury in sparring, but probably doesn't mean that much at this stage. We already know that Tyson Fury can be dropped, and we know that Dillian Whyte can be dropped. Ultimately, they've both come a long way since then, and they're different fighters. And Peter Fury talks about how Dillian Whyte is a different fighter now compared to what he was then. He says back then he was very clumsy. Dillian Whyte is still a little on the clumsy side now as well. Excuse me, let me just adjust my mic here. Dillian Whyte a little bit on the clumsy side still, but definitely improved along the way. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I'll leave a link to this article in the description, so any of you can go read it rather than me having to go through quote by quote And rather than me play this video here, which could well be copyrighted, I'm sure it is, you guys check it out for yourselves. Link in the description. It's happening out. Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up, there's no contract, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.